The dinner party at Derek's house was supposed to be a simple celebration. He'd just been promoted to senior vice president at his tech firm, and I was happy for him. He'd worked hard for it. It wasn't my kind of crowd, though. I wasn't used to mingling with people who wore sharp suits and talked about acquisitions, revenues, and market shares like it was second nature. But Olivia insisted I come. She's my girlfriend, and she's been in my life for 5 years. Olivia's different from me. She works in digital marketing, helping startups find their way in the crowded tech world. Her world's fast-paced, always changing. My world? I work as a senior mechanic at Iron Tech Automotives, fixing cars, diagnosing engine issues, and making sure everything runs smoothly. It's not glamorous work, but it's honest. I've been doing it for 8 years now, and I'm good at it. I take pride in it. But Olivia's in a different league, and sometimes it's hard not to feel like the odd one out. She always assures me that we're good, that we're a team, but I wonder if I fit into the world she's creating for herself. Derek's party was in full swing when we arrived. The atmosphere was a far cry from the laid-back, blue-collar life I'm used to. The people were talking about their latest startup investments, their trips to Europe, the business meetings they'd had that week. I nodded along, smiled, and tried to engage in the conversation, but I felt out of place. Olivia had told me to keep up with the discussions, to at least try to seem interested, but I couldn't help but feel like I was missing something everyone else had. I was just a mechanic in a room full of people who had innovator stamped across their foreheads. I grabbed a drink, trying to blend into the background, and stayed mostly quiet while Olivia caught up with a few friends from her agency. She was talking to Derek, laughing easily with the others. I felt a pang of envy, wishing I could be as comfortable in that world. But then, everything changed when Mia Waller, Derek's business partner, stood up to make a toast. Mia was tall, poised, and had a way of commanding attention without even trying. She and Derek had been business partners for years, and from what I gathered, she was the type of person who could get anyone to do what she wanted, with just a smile and a few well-placed words. She had that kind of confidence that made people listen. I knew her well enough to sense the subtle arrogance beneath her polished exterior, though. I braced myself when I saw her glance in my direction. "Before we get into the celebration," Mia said, holding up her glass, "I'd like to say a few words about Olivia's boyfriend, Eric. Eric works in the automotive industry, fixing cars. It's the kind of hard work that keeps things moving, you know? While Olivia's out there managing high budgets and growing businesses, Eric works on engines. Nothing wrong with that, of course. Someone's got to fix the cars, right?" I could feel every eye in the room turn toward me, the laughter from her words ringing in my ears. My face flushed. Olivia's hand squeezed mine under the table, but I could tell she was embarrassed. She wasn't angry at me, not exactly, but the discomfort was there. She wasn't proud of me at that moment, and I could feel it in the pit of my stomach. Mia's words stung. I had spent years building my reputation in a field that demanded skill and precision. And here was Mia, mocking my career in front of everyone, framing it as something lesser. She wasn't just poking fun at my job. She was poking fun at who I was. The room was quiet for a beat. Mia had a way of saying things that made everyone laugh, but the tension in the air was undeniable. I felt small, but I couldn't let it slide. I had to say something, so I did. I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against the floor, and all eyes in the room turned to me. I could feel Olivia's hand on my knee, her fingers gripping tightly, urging me to stay calm, to let it go, but I couldn't. Not after what Mia had said. I wasn't about to let her belittle me. Not here. Not in front of all these people. I took a deep breath and looked around the room, trying to steady my nerves. "Mia, I think there's been a misunderstanding," I began, my voice steady but firm. I could feel the weight of the moment, the silence hanging heavy as everyone waited to see what I would do. "I'm not just a mechanic. I'm the head of the service department at Iron Tech Automotives. I've been running the shop for years now, making sure our team operates at peak efficiency. I'm proud of what I do. I lead my team with integrity and dedication." Mia's smile faltered for a moment, her polished exterior cracking just slightly as she took in my words. For a second, I saw the tiniest flicker of discomfort in her eyes, but she quickly recovered. The smile she gave me this time was tight, forced. Oh, of course, Eric, she said, her voice dripping with faux sweetness. I didn't mean any offense. It's just, well, Olivia and I. She trailed off, trying to cover her tracks, but it didn't matter anymore. The damage had been done, and she knew it. I didn't respond right away. I just stood there, looking at her, and then at the people who had been so quick to laugh at my expense. I could feel their eyes on me, and it only made my stomach churn more. But I wasn't going to let her off the hook that easily. I wasn't going to let this moment slide. Not this time. I get it, I said finally, my voice a little louder now, more deliberate. You see a mechanic, and you think of grease-stained overalls, hands that are never clean, a job that's all about muscle and tools. But what you don't see is the leadership it takes to run a department, the skills it requires to troubleshoot complex issues, to make decisions on the fly that affect the lives of our customers and the people who work under me. I paused, letting my words sink in. I'm not just the guy who fixes cars. I'm someone who builds solutions, who manages people, who takes pride in doing good, honest work. And honestly, I don't need to apologize for that. Not to you, not to anyone. The room was completely still. I could see a few people nodding slightly, but I didn't care about their approval. I wasn't doing this for them. I wasn't doing this to win anyone's favor. I was doing it for myself, for my own dignity. Olivia was silent, her face flushed, her eyes downcast. I could feel the tension between us, the weight of the moment settling heavily in my chest. But I knew I had to stand my ground. If I didn't, it would always feel like I had let someone else define me. I'm going to step outside for a minute, I said finally, my tone a little softer but no less firm. I turned away, not waiting for Mia to say anything else. I didn't care to hear what she had to offer after that. I needed some space. As I walked outside onto the patio, the cool night air hit me, and I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. I was furious, but also strangely proud. I had said what needed to be said, and I wasn't backing down. I leaned against the railing, staring out at the city lights, letting the moment sink in. That's when my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, still feeling the tension from the party, but when I saw the message from Greg, my heart stopped. Eric, the deal's finalized. We're acquiring Waller Motors next week. You'll be the new regional manager overseeing their operations. Great work. More details tomorrow. Congrats. I blinked at the screen, reading the message over and over, not quite processing what I was seeing. I had just been promoted to regional manager, and the company I worked for had acquired Waller Motors, Mia's company. The same Mia who had just humiliated me. In a matter of hours, I would be her boss. I couldn't help it. I started to laugh. It wasn't loud or manic, just a quiet chuckle that grew into something more substantial as the absurdity of it all hit me. It was like the universe had played a cruel joke. What went around really did come around. I shook my head, still laughing softly, trying to keep it together. I wasn't sure what to do with this new information, but one thing was certain. Mia had no idea what was about to hit her. As I stood there on the patio, staring at my phone in disbelief, I could hardly believe what I had just read. The acquisition was real. Waller Motors, the company Mia had spent years building, the company she was so proud of, was now part of IronTech Automotives, the same company I worked for. And just like that, I had been promoted to regional manager, a role that would place me in charge of overseeing Mia's operations. In less than 24 hours, I would be the one calling the shots at Waller Motors. It was almost too perfect, too ironic. I couldn't help but laugh, a bitter laugh that echoed in the quiet night. It wasn't the laughter of someone who'd won. It was the kind of laugh that came from seeing justice served, even if it was a little too late. I ran a hand through my hair, still processing the absurdity of it all. Just a few hours ago, Mia had mocked me in front of everyone at Derek's party, belittling my profession, treating me like I was somehow less than everyone else in that room. And now, she was going to have to report to me. I slipped my phone back into my pocket, trying to pull myself together. I wasn't sure if I was angry, relieved, or just stunned. All I knew was that Mia's words had stung, but they weren't going to define me. I wasn't going to let her make me feel small again. Not when I had just been given this new responsibility, this new position. It wasn't about revenge or payback. It was about doing my job, about proving to everyone, especially to Mia, that I had earned my place at the table. As I stood there, lost in my thoughts, I heard footsteps approaching. I turned to find Derek walking toward me, looking a little concerned. "Hey, man, I'm really sorry about Mia," Derek said, rubbing the back of his neck. "She has a way of making everything about her. I know that wasn't cool." I took a deep breath, not quite sure how to respond. "Yeah, I noticed," I said, glancing down at my phone again, still trying to wrap my head around the message. "But it's fine. I think I've got something that'll make her a little more humble." Derek raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" I pulled up the message from Greg and showed it to Derek. His eyes widened as he read the words on the screen. "Wait, Waller Motors? That's her company. Dude, you're her boss now?" I nodded slowly. "Seems that way." Derek stood there for a moment, taking in the information. "You're really going to go through with this? You're going to show her?" His voice was hesitant, like he wasn't sure whether it was a good idea or not. I shook my head. "I'm not showing her anything, Derek. I'm just doing my job. I don't need to prove anything to her or anyone else, but I won't let her get away with treating me like that. Not anymore." Derek was silent for a moment, processing what I had just said. "I get it," he finally said. "She's out of line, but I don't know, man. This whole thing just feels like a mess." I let out a heavy sigh, glancing back toward the party. "Yeah, it's a mess, but sometimes the only way to fix things is to clean them up, even if it's uncomfortable." Derek nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Well, just know that I've got your back. I didn't like how Mia treated you, but I don't want you to do anything you might regret." I gave him a small smile, grateful for his support. "Thanks, Derek. I appreciate it. But trust me, this is something I need to handle myself." With that, Derek clapped me on the back and headed back inside. I took another deep breath, trying to calm my nerves. The gravity of the situation was sinking in. I was about to walk back into that party, face Mia, and let her know that things had changed. I wasn't going to let her forget that I was more than just a mechanic. I was a leader, and now I was her boss. As I walked back inside, I saw Olivia talking to a few people at the bar, laughing uneasily. She caught my eye and gave me a small, uncertain smile, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. I knew this wasn't just about Mia anymore. This was about us too. The whole night had changed everything, but I was determined to make sure it didn't break us. I had work to do, both professionally and personally, and I wasn't going to let anyone, not Mia, not anyone, distract me from that. I walked back into the party, feeling the eyes of the room on me as I passed by. I wasn't sure if it was the energy from the earlier exchange with Mia or the realization that my entire life was about to shift, but something had changed. The weight of it felt different now. I wasn't just the guy at the party who had to grin and bear it anymore. I had a new role now, a new purpose. It wasn't about getting revenge on Mia. It was about owning my success, about making sure no one, not even her, could ever undermine me again. As I made my way toward Olivia, I caught her eye. Her expression softened when she saw me, but I could still see the tightness in her shoulders, the way she hesitated before meeting my gaze. I knew this wasn't easy for her either. She had spent the night navigating the uncomfortable tension between me and Mia, trying to keep things civil while her business partner had publicly humiliated me. I could see that she was torn, caught between supporting me and not wanting to escalate things further. "I'm sorry," Olivia said quietly when I reached her. "I didn't know Mia was going to do that. I didn't know she was going to put you on the spot like that." I shook my head, trying to downplay it. "It's okay. I didn't expect you to do anything. I've got it handled." She bit her lip, her brow furrowing. "But that wasn't right, Eric. What she said, the way she said it was cruel, and I didn't defend you." "I didn't need you to defend me," I said softly. "I just needed you to understand that it wasn't okay. You don't have to apologize for not stepping in, Olivia. I can handle myself." She looked at me, her eyes searching my face like she was trying to gauge if I really meant that. I could see the conflict in her, the guilt she felt about not speaking up. But the truth was, I didn't want her to feel like she needed to be my shield. This was my battle, and I needed to fight it on my terms, not hers. Just then, Derek walked by, offering me a nod of support as he passed. He didn't need to say anything, The way he looked at me said it all. He knew the kind of man I was, and he respected me for it. Olivia and I stood there for a moment, the noise of the party swirling around us. I could feel the heaviness of the night pressing down on both of us. The tension was thick, but I didn't want to dwell on Mia or the awkwardness of the toast anymore. It had happened, and I had dealt with it. What mattered now was how I handled things going forward. "I'm going to head out," I said, my voice steady but not unfriendly. "It's been a long night, and I think I need some air. You coming?" She nodded, her face softening. "Yeah, let's go." We slipped out of the party quietly, the night air a welcome relief from the tension inside. As we walked to the car, I could feel the weight of everything lifting slightly. Olivia wasn't upset with me. She wasn't angry, just conflicted, unsure of how to handle everything. But as we got into the car and drove home, the silence between us wasn't uncomfortable. It was more of a shared moment of realization. Things had changed, and we both knew it. When we got home, I went straight to the kitchen and grabbed a bottle of water. Olivia changed into one of my old t-shirts, looking more like herself again. She came downstairs and sat at the table, staring at me for a long moment. "I don't know what to say," she started, her voice quieter now. "I've never had to deal with anything like this. I've always been around people who don't work with their hands. I know that sounds bad, but you know what I mean." I took a deep breath, nodding. "Yeah, I get it. I've been in your world, Olivia. And I get that it's different, but don't ever feel like you have to apologize for me or for what I do. I'm proud of my work. I always have been, and that's not going to change." She sighed, her shoulders relaxing as she looked at me. "I know, I'm just trying to figure out where I fit in all of this now." I smiled, reaching across the table to take her hand. "We'll figure it out together." We sat there for a while, in the quiet of our kitchen, the events of the evening slowly fading into the background. It was going to take time to process everything, to adjust to the changes in our lives. But one thing was clear. I wasn't the same person I had been when I walked into that party. I wasn't going to let anyone define me anymore, least of all Mia. I had earned my place, and that was something no one could take away from me. The following week, the shift in my life felt almost surreal. Monday morning came quickly, and as I stepped into the IronTech Automotive's office, there was a new sense of purpose in my stride. The promotion had been finalized, and the acquisition of Waller Motors was now official. I was no longer just a mechanic. I was the regional manager, and that meant I had the authority to make changes, to lead, and to build something better for both companies. The reality of it was sinking in, but I was determined not to let the gravity of the position overwhelm me. When I walked into the conference room for my first meeting with the Waller Motors team, the atmosphere was tense. Everyone knew who I was now, the mechanic who had once been the butt of jokes, the guy who had just been mocked in front of everyone at Derek's party. But I wasn't going to let that define me. I had a job to do, and I was going to do it well. Mia wasn't in the meeting. She had scheduled some kind of strategy session for later that afternoon, but I wasn't concerned about that. What mattered now was getting everyone on the same page, making sure the team knew I was in charge and that I wasn't there to play games. I walked in with my head high, dressed in my usual gear, steel-toed boots, work pants, and a simple shirt, the kind I wore every day at IronTech. There was something about the familiarity of it that made me feel grounded, like I didn't need to change who I was just because I had a new title. I introduced myself to the team, made small talk to break the ice, and then dove right into the numbers. I spent the next hour reviewing the operational inefficiencies I had already noted during the initial assessment of Waller Motors. The team looked at me cautiously, some with skepticism, others with curiosity. But I could tell they were starting to respect the fact that I wasn't just some outsider coming in to impose a new set of rules. I was speaking their language: costs, production schedules, supply chains, and the importance of efficiency. These were the things I understood, and I wasn't going to let anyone forget it. By the time the meeting ended, I could sense a shift. Mia had a reputation for running things her way, but as I walked out of that conference room, I could tell that the team was starting to see me as their leader. They didn't need to be impressed by me. They just needed to know I was competent, that I could help turn things around for the better. That's all I ever needed to show them. A few hours later, Mia finally appeared. She walked into my office, looking as poised and polished as ever. The smile she gave me was forced, and I could see the flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. She had always been the one in control, the one who ran the show. Now she was the one who had to answer to me. "I see you've wasted no time diving into the details," she said, her voice smooth but tinged with irritation. "I wasn't expecting you to get to work so quickly." I smiled, leaning back in my chair. "Well, Mia, you know how it is. When you've been in the trenches as long as I have, you don't waste time. We've got a lot of work to do if we're going to make this transition smooth." She didn't respond right away. Instead, she looked at me, trying to size me up. I wasn't sure what she was thinking, but I didn't care. I wasn't here to make friends with her. I was here to do my job. "I'm sure you've got your vision for how things should go," she said, her tone colder now. "But just so you know, I'm not someone who takes direction easily." "I'm not here to give you orders, Mia," I replied calmly. "I'm here to make sure this company succeeds. If that means working with you, great. If not, then we'll figure it out. But either way, I'm in charge now, and I expect you to work with me, not against me." For a moment, she stared at me, the tension thick between us. Then she gave a small nod. "Fine. We'll see how it goes, won't we?" As she left my office, I couldn't help but feel a little victorious. It wasn't about power. It was about respect. Mia might not like the fact that I was her boss now, but she was going to have to accept it. I wasn't going anywhere, and neither was the work I was going to do. I had earned this position, and I was going to prove that I could handle it. The rest of the week passed in a blur of meetings, assessments, and operational reviews. Every day, I felt more comfortable in my new role, more confident in the decisions I was making. I wasn't just making the company better. I was proving something to myself. I was proving that blue-collar work wasn't lesser. It was just as important as any other job, and it was worth something. At the end of the week, I called Olivia to tell her how things were going. She listened patiently as I told her about the progress I'd made, the challenges I'd faced, and the changes that were already starting to take shape. When I finished, she said something that made me stop in my tracks. "I'm proud of you, Eric. I think you finally found your place in all of this." It wasn't just the words themselves that got to me. It was the sincerity behind them. I didn't need anyone's approval. But hearing Olivia say that, hearing her be proud of me for the first time in a while, made everything feel right. "I'm proud of me too," I said, smiling into the phone, "and I'm not done yet." The weeks after my promotion passed in a blur of meetings, reports, and adjustments. The transition at Waller Motors wasn't smooth, but it was necessary. Mia, despite her initial resistance, began to fall in line. She'd been running things her way for so long, but I could tell she was slowly realizing that the old methods weren't going to cut it anymore. The changes I had started implementing were already showing results. Inventory costs were down, efficiency was up, and employees were starting to feel like they had a clear direction. But Mia's attitude didn't change right away. She still carried herself with that air of superiority, but there was a flicker of something else in her eyes when she looked at me. Respect, or at least acknowledgement that I wasn't going anywhere. Olivia and I were adjusting too. She'd been quieter than usual, unsure of how to navigate the new dynamic between me and Mia. I could see the tension in her whenever we talked about work. She had never expected me to be in charge of Mia's company, let alone to be the one calling the shots. It wasn't just about the job. It was about us, about how we fit into each other's worlds. I wanted to believe that we could make it work, but I knew it wasn't going to be easy. There were times when I could see her hesitation, a part of her unsure of how to reconcile the man she loved with the professional environment she had spent years building. I could feel the strain between us, but I also knew we were both trying to figure it out. One afternoon, about a month into the transition, I sat in my office at Waller Motors, reviewing some new budget projections. It had been a long day, and my eyes were starting to blur from staring at spreadsheets for hours. That's when my phone buzzed on the desk. It was a text from Derek. "You doing okay? Heard things are going pretty well at Waller Motors." I smiled, glad to hear from him. Derek had been a solid friend through everything. He was one of the few people who knew how tough the adjustment had been for me. I typed back quickly. Yeah, things are moving in the right direction. Mia's not thrilled, but I'm not worried about that. It's all part of the job. Derek's response came quickly. Just make sure you're not letting the work consume you. Don't forget to take care of yourself, man. I read the message twice. It wasn't the first time Derek had warned me about burning out, but something about the way he said it this time made me pause. I'd been so focused on proving myself at Waller Motors, on making sure everything was running smoothly, that I hadn't really stopped to think about myself. It had been weeks since I'd taken a full day off. And Olivia and I hadn't had a quiet evening together in what felt like forever. I leaned back in my chair and rubbed my eyes. Maybe Derek was right. Maybe I had been letting the work consume me more than I realized. The truth was, I had been so eager to prove my worth, to show everyone, including myself, that I belonged in this role that I had forgotten to take a breath, to step back, to focus on the other parts of my life that mattered. I shot a quick reply to Derek. Thanks, man. I'll take it to heart. Then I stood up, grabbed my jacket, and walked out of my office. The building was quiet at this time of day. Most of the staff had already left. But I wasn't ready to go home yet. I needed to clear my head. I walked across the street to a small cafe I liked, a quiet spot where I could sip a cup of coffee without the weight of expectations hanging over me. As I sat there, the warmth of the coffee in my hands, I allowed myself to think about the next steps. Yes, I was in charge now, and I had earned that. But I also had to remember who I was, not just as a manager, but as Eric Fields, the guy who worked with his hands, the guy who had built his career from the ground up, who took pride in the simple things. As I sat there, I realized that I was starting to find a balance, not just with the work, but with my life. I wasn't just going to let the job define me anymore. I wasn't going to let anyone make me feel like less than I was. I had already proven myself to the people who mattered. Now, it was time to prove it to myself. When I got home later that evening, I found Olivia sitting on the couch, flipping through a magazine. She looked up when she saw me and smiled, but I could tell something was still weighing on her. I sat down next to her, and for the first time in a long while, we just talked. No work, no stress, just us. I'm sorry I've been so distant lately, I said, my voice softer than usual. She looked at me, surprised. It's not your fault, Eric. We're both just adjusting. But I miss you. I miss the way things used to be before all of this. I nodded, feeling the weight of her words. I miss us, too. I think I've been so focused on the job that I forgot what really matters. And for the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of peace. The next few weeks were a whirlwind, but something had shifted. I was still deeply involved in the transition at Waller Motors, still working hard to implement changes, but I had started to take a step back and breathe. The work wasn't going anywhere, and neither was the responsibility, but I realized I needed to find a better balance. Not just for the company, but for myself and for Olivia. Things at Waller Motors were improving steadily. Mia and I had reached a sort of uneasy truce. She wasn't thrilled about my leadership, but I could tell she was starting to respect me. The improvements in operations were undeniable. Inventory levels had stabilized, costs had dropped, and employee morale was slowly but surely on the rise. Mia didn't like being led by someone she'd once thought of as beneath her, but she had to admit that the changes were working. It was hard to argue with results. But as things improved at work, I was also making changes in my personal life. Olivia and I were finally talking more openly about everything. The tension between us, the challenges we were both facing, and the fact that we were both learning how to navigate this new phase of our relationship. It wasn't easy. There were still moments when I could see the doubt in her eyes, the hesitation about how my new role was changing the dynamic between us. But we were talking, and that was a start. One evening, after a long day at Waller Motors, I found myself sitting across from Olivia at a small Italian restaurant in the city. It was the first time in weeks that we had gone out for a meal, just the two of us. We had decided to make it a weekly ritual. No work talk, no business talk, just us. It felt like a small victory. It wasn't about fixing everything overnight, but it was about taking small steps to reconnect. I've been thinking, Olivia said, her voice quieter than usual as she twirled a piece of pasta on her fork. About everything. About you taking this job. About how things have changed. I don't think I realized how much it was affecting us until now. I looked at her, trying to gauge where this conversation was headed. I get it, I said slowly. It's a lot. The promotion, the pressure, it's been a big shift. But I'm trying, Olivia. I really am. I don't want us to lose what we have. She smiled, but it was a little sad. I know you're trying. I just think we've both been so focused on our own worlds lately, and we forgot to be a team. I don't want to feel like I'm losing you to this job, or that we're both so caught up in everything else that we forget about us. Her words hit me harder than I expected. I realized that while I had been focusing on proving myself at work, I had been neglecting the very thing that had kept me grounded, my relationship with Olivia. We had always been a team, but somewhere along the way, I had let the job consume me. I hadn't been present, not in the way she needed me to be. I'm sorry, I said, my voice softer. I've been so caught up in everything that I forgot about us. I don't want to lose you, Olivia. I don't want to be someone who puts everything else before the people who matter. She reached across the table, taking my hand in hers. I don't want that either, Eric. I just want us to remember why we're in this together. We're a team. We always have been. I squeezed her hand, feeling the weight of her words. It wasn't just about finding a balance between work and life. It was about remembering what really mattered. Olivia mattered. We mattered. And I couldn't let anything, not even my new job, make me lose sight of that. That night, as we finished our meal and walked back to the car, I felt a sense of relief. Things weren't perfect, but they were better. We were better. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was heading in the right direction. Not just as a manager, but as a partner, as someone who knew what it meant to prioritize the people I loved. I still had a lot of work ahead of me, both professionally and personally, but I was starting to realize that the most important thing was to keep moving forward, one step at a time. And with Olivia by my side, I knew I could handle whatever came next. As the weeks passed, the rhythm of life began to settle into something I could handle. The transition at Waller Motors was becoming smoother, and I had earned the respect of the team. Mia, though still a little prickly, had come to accept my leadership. She still wasn't thrilled about taking direction from me, but it was clear that the improvements in the company were starting to speak for themselves. Employees were more motivated, the numbers were improving, and things were running more efficiently. Mia and I had even started to collaborate more, though the tension between us still simmered beneath the surface. I had come to terms with the fact that our professional relationship would never be warm, but that didn't bother me anymore. I was focused on doing my job, and I was doing it well. At home, things with Olivia were better. We were talking more, reconnecting in ways we hadn't in months. There were still moments of hesitation, but they were fewer and farther between. I was making more of an effort to be present, to listen when she spoke, to show her that she mattered to me just as much as my work did. We still had our challenges, adjusting to my new role, figuring out how to balance our lives, but we were getting there. I could feel the shift, the growth, the slow but steady movement towards something stronger. One afternoon, about a month after our dinner at the Italian restaurant, I was at Waller Motors reviewing some figures when my phone buzzed on my desk. I glanced at the screen, seeing a text from Olivia. How about a date night tonight? No work talk, just us. I smiled to myself. It was exactly what we needed. A reminder that we were still a team, still us. I typed back quickly, sounds perfect. I'll be home at 7. The day dragged on, but I couldn't stop thinking about the evening ahead. By the time I got home, I was ready for a break from the constant barrage of emails and meetings. Olivia greeted me at the door, dressed in a simple yet elegant outfit that made my heart skip a beat. It was such a small gesture, but it reminded me of the way things had been when we first met, the ease, the simplicity of just enjoying each other's company. We decided on a small bistro near the water, a quiet spot where we could talk without the usual interruptions. As we sat down to dinner, I realized how much I had missed moments like this. Moments where we didn't have to talk about work, didn't have to discuss the stresses of the day. We could just be. You know, Olivia said, her eyes glinting with amusement. "I think we're actually getting good at this whole work-life balance thing." I chuckled, raising my glass to her. "I think we are, but I wouldn't have gotten here without you." She reached across the table, taking my hand in hers. "I know, we're in this together. I think we both lost sight of that for a while." "I won't let that happen again," I promised her, squeezing her hand gently. "We've been through too much to let the small stuff get in the way." The conversation flowed easily, and for the first time in months, I felt a sense of peace that I hadn't realized I'd been missing. We talked about everything and nothing: our plans for the weekend, the new restaurant opening downtown, and, for the first time in a long time, we laughed about the little things. There was no tension, no unease, just us. It was a reminder that everything I had been working toward, everything I had been trying to prove, wasn't worth much if I didn't have Olivia by my side. By the end of the night, we were both smiling, content in a way we hadn't been in a while. As we walked back to the car, Olivia leaned her head against my shoulder, and I realized something. The work would always be there, the challenges would always come, but nothing was more important than the people who stood with you through it all. In that moment, I felt like I had everything I needed. The job, the success, the respect. It was all important, but the real reward was knowing I wasn't alone. I had Olivia, and together, we could handle whatever life threw our way. Life is about balance. No matter how hard you work or how high you climb, don't lose sight of what truly matters: your relationships, your integrity, and your well-being. Strive for success, but never at the cost of your personal happiness. Surround yourself with people who support you and be present for them in return. Embrace challenges, but don't let them consume you. Remember, respect is earned through actions, not titles. Be kind to yourself and others, and never forget that the journey isn't just about achieving goals, but about growing, learning, and connecting with those who matter most.